Inside of Revit, there are two types of location or space-based objects that define either a room or a mechanical space. They're called room and space. But often there's a misunderstanding or a disconnect between which these should be used for or when one should be used over another, especially when you're working with things like CADvent for digital construction and BIM, because they will typically talk about a space, but when is a space and when is a space a room? And actually I want to go through the differences between them in Revit, because in Revit we do have two very different components, a room component and a space component. Typically speaking, if we're working in the realms of architecture, we work with rooms inside of Revit. A room is controlled by room bounding elements, such as walls and floors and ceilings and roofs. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to go ahead and draw four simple walls. I'm going to do a simple flat roof. I don't really mind what this looks like for the purpose of this. Perfect, that will do. So I've got something that's representing a small building of some sort, or shed, because it's quite small. But what we're going to do on here, let's just make that a flat roof. Thank you very much. Is on our level 0, I'm just going to place in a couple of internal partitions, just to have something that is maybe split into different areas. Now, under our architecture tab, we have a room tool, and a room can be defined by any enclosed space, and the spaces are enclosed by room bounding objects. So each of these objects has a property against it called room bounding. If you turn it off, the object is not used to bound or bind rooms. If you turn it on, the object is used to create rooms. So I'm going to place a room here, here, and here. And as you'll know, if you've used Revit, the room will work out the volume calculations, the area calculations. It will number it and name it, and you can color fill and so on and so forth. We can select the room by finding the room object itself, which is visible here. We can also highlight the tag and press tab, or we can go over the wall and hit tab until we get the room. When we select the room, you can see that alongside constraints, we basically have some dimensional information. We have some identity information, such as finishes for paints or whatever it might be. And then we've got some IFC exporting options. That is it. Under our Systems tab, under our Analyze tab, we have Spaces and Zones. Now, from a BIM perspective, when you're working as an architect, a room will be used as a space. So the term space in Revit is very different to the term space from a CADvent or a BIM perspective. Again, a space is either a room or a space. Architects use room. Everyone else, mechanical engineers, for example, use a space. Now, because of that, I have a space tool, and that space works in exactly the same way. You can see it will grab a enclosed area. It still uses room bounding to be able to define and place those spaces. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a space in each one of these rooms. You will notice that Revit does not complain because the two components are vastly different. Here is my space. Look at the sheer amount of difference in properties that I have in a space versus inside a room. The space has, as well as dimensional information on electrical lighting, information on loads, information on mechanical flow, information on energy analysis. And all of that information will be controlled and driven by other features inside of Revit, such as some of the analysis tools, such as the ability to look at heating and cooling loads and stuff like that. Against a room, we just don't have that level of information. It's purely there to define a room, an architectural space. Whereas the mechanical space is there to define everything about that space. What's its use? What's the occupancy? What's the electrical load? What's the heating and cooling load? And because of that, they have vastly different benefits, pros and cons. Again, if you don't need that, just place a room. If you're an architect, typically you're just going to place a room. But if you're interested in any of those other bits of information, then that's where you want to place a space. Space is for the area, the volumetric information, the loads on that particular space. The room is just about the size, the dimensions, and the finishes.